I was just like, I'm so upset. Yeah. Oh. Dude, I didn't get a tissue. I'm sweating.
Yo, welcome back to my channel.
Hi everyone.
5 hours later.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Bobby.
I'm just doing my thing. I'm just trying to be comfortable.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today, my husband Alan and I are going to be doing a Q&A style, what we learned in our first year of marriage type video.
Boom.
Oh my god. So I reached out to our friends on Instagram asking if they had any specific questions about what we experienced this year. So today we're going to be answering those questions. But before we do that, I thought it'd be good to give Alan a chance to introduce himself a little bit first.
Hey everyone, it's finally nice to meet you. It's Alan. I'm sure you've seen me in some of her other videos that she's posted. I'm gonna pull.
Alright.
Why did you laugh? I'm finally glad that I'm able to introduce myself. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I got the chance to meet Serena in middle school at my friend's birthday party, but that is a story in itself, and if you want to learn about it, make sure to comment.
Alright, should we jump right in?
Sure.
So our first question is, how did your relationship change with marriage? Good and challenging things.
For me personally, when I summarize dating with us, it's just more fun. We thought everything was roses and dogs and butterflies and everything positive that you can think of. But I think as we slowly transitioned into getting married, that's when we had to make a lot of decisions together, which was very challenging. When we were dating, the hardest decision that we had to make was what restaurant did we want to go to? But I think with marriage, it came with what venue do we want to pick for our wedding? What catering company do we want? Where do we want to live after we get married? That was the most challenging part because it had so many implications of what happened after.
Yeah, a lot of high stakes conversations. For me, I tend to be like a very in the moment kind of person. Prior to marriage, I barely even thought about the future. Even a year from now, I rarely thought about. So being married for the first time, we had to talk about things like finances, when we were gonna plan on having kids, how much money we would have to save up. Just a lot of opportunities for our values to clash or have to figure out what each other wants or needs. I think that would be like the biggest difference with getting married. A good change is that, especially for me, because I'm very clingy, so being married has just been the best change because I always get to be with him. The biggest challenge I went through when we were dating was having to say goodbye to him every time we hung out. Like every time around like 8:30 p.m. I would start feeling anxiety. He'd be like, oh, it's 8:30, signaling to me that in about half an hour you'd have to leave or something.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, no, I'd be really sad. But now I never have to do that. How about you?
So, I mean, if you guys knew our story, like I've been chasing her for about 10, 11 years on and off. And so I think it was sort of like an ending of a book almost where we got to finally get married. And I'm sure we'll share our story a little bit later, but I've really been chasing after Serena since like middle school, and we're 26 now. So a lot of the positives that I've experienced is like being able to go through challenges and grow together as like a family. I think good can come out of moments of conflict resolutions or challenging situations, and so I think that's something that I really look back on in our first year of marriage, and I'm really happy about.
Okay, so our next question is, what did you learn about each other that you didn't know before? Good and bad, and how did you deal with it? Something that I just like couldn't get over for the longest time, but Alan leaves his clothes literally like everywhere on the ground.
This is like not even that true. Like it's only the side of my bed.
Yeah.
Like Serena actually leaves like all her clothes everywhere. The sofa, the egg chair, the dining table, the kitchen. For me, it's literally like
I admit I do leave my clothes everywhere, but I tend to leave it like not on the ground. So it was just really funny to me, like all of a sudden there's just like clothes on the ground, and like also if he's like taking a shower, you can see like his trail of like his pants and his shirt just kind of like tracing his way into the shower. I was like, why does it have to be like on the ground? But yeah. I learned also that Alan's always like very neutral, very chill, not too high, not too low. Like if I freak out, he'll be like, oh, it's It's okay. It's not the end of the world. So what about you?
Well, I want to share a story first. When we moved in, I think it was when I moved in first, we were cleaning the kitchen. I grabbed the towel and I started wiping the floor with the towel. And Serena starts freaking out and she's like, what are you doing? Why are you using a towel to wipe the floor? And I'm like, because the floor is wet. And she's like, you can't use that towel. You gotta use this towel. I think we have like 3 to 5 towels.
Well, let me explain that. So we have one towel that's supposedly the cleanest towel, designated for drying clean dishes. And then there's a towel for the counter, which is like dirtier than the dish towel, but still cleaner than the floor towel. And then we have a floor towel that literally cleans the floor, which you don't want to use to clean the counter.
Oh,
It touched
no,
the
no, no.
floor.
I didn't mean it like that. It seems like you have like a particular type of towel that you use for the floor. Like, I would grab, like, yes, if I wipe the floor with the ground, then that will be the ground towel.
No, you cannot do that.
See, like that, oh, I didn't know that. I just thought you just used towels.
You cannot. Because you have to have a towel that's already like old and raggedy to use it on something as gross as the floor.
Floor's not
But if
good.
you're like used to, I don't know, showering with a towel or wiping the counter with that towel, you can't just be like, okay, now it's going to be a floor towel and then put it on the floor and start wiping the floor with it.
But once you wash it, isn't it all the same thing?
I don't know, it's just gross.
All right. But anyway, that's something that I learned that we had to
That's
just
what I
do.
learned about you as well.
Yeah. What was the best part and the hardest part about being married? Any surprising or unexpected challenges? How did you overcome them? Since I'm an only child, it's really nice to have sort of a roommate and someone that you really like to hang out with. You never really feel lonely. Just being able to have someone to get good food with or do fun things with is always such a big plus in my life.
Hardest part about being married.
I think the hardest part for me about being married, and I'm not sure a lot of people know this about me, but I'm always thinking like 1, 2 to 5 years ahead in my life. So the challenge that it brings is it's hard for me to live in the moment and appreciate the things that are happening now, while Serena, on the other hand, likes to enjoy the present, enjoy the things, while I'm thinking about what's our next house gonna be, when are we gonna have a kid, what do I want in my career, where do I want to be in 5 years. And so I think for me, I had to really let that side of my life go almost, not necessarily like sacrifice it, but rather there had to be compromise. So while it is important to have sort of similar goals and be on the same page with where you're going, there needed to be more of a healthier balance of living in the moment, enjoying the present, taking risks together now, versus putting all my eggs in like one basket of like, where are we going?
Growing up, I had this idea of marriage where when you're married, all of a sudden you have to be extremely responsible. You have to care about your future family, providing, having a stable income and foundation. And I just wasn't there yet. I mean, I'm still not there yet. And so I think for a lot of our first year, I felt really pressured and stressed to come up with goals or reach Alan's expectations of what married life should look like or what planning for a future kid should look like, when I barely had my life figured out. My identity as a wife definitely started clashing a lot with my identity as just a human being, and I couldn't reconcile the two for the longest time. Now I'm on a journey of figuring out what it looks like to be a wife who's working with Alan to reach goals and talk about the future, while also encouraging Alan to live in the moment too.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. What is the hardest fight or moment that you went through, and how did you work through it? It's pretty easy to remember the hardest fight or moment that we had because it's like imprinted into my memory. I had just gotten off a call with a friend, and that was really one of the first moments that I realized that I wanted to try doing YouTube. And so I remember feeling excited but also hesitant to debrief that conversation with Alan, because at that point we had several conversations already. We had one conversation where I remember talking about social media and YouTube and sharing my dreams with Alan, and I remember him saying, but I really think that you can do all of that while still having a full-time job. That conversation was just a really disheartening one. I knew that at the end of the day, it would be really nice to have a full-time job. But at the same time, I just knew that as much as I wanted that option, like my heart wasn't there. I was burnt out already. My mental health was in a bad state, and I just couldn't see myself being happy in a full-time job while trying to pursue this on the side. So after the call with my friend, I went downstairs. Naturally, Alan asked me how to go. And so I started sharing that I wanted to pursue YouTube full time, but that what was holding me back was this fear of not going for that full-time job route that he had been encouraging. It was just like a really big fight because at one point, Alan didn't really remember that he gave me that expectation. And so he was like, no, I didn't expect you to get a full-time job or something. I was like, wait, what? That's not true. And so I was like getting really worked up about it. And just keep in mind, like prior to this fight, we had never really fought before. Like we had definitely a lot of conflicts and we would resolve it peacefully. But this time I was like straight up like low-key screaming a little. I was like, what do you mean you didn't say that? Like if you didn't say that you expected me to have a full-time job, then I basically spent these past few months being depressed, anxious, and discouraged for like no reason at all. Like if you're truly right that you never said that, I just wasted all these months. I don't know. I just don't know how we went through it. But finally, like I was able to communicate it. And then he was like, oh, that's what you mean. Like, yeah, I did say that. And I was like, wait, what? I remember flipping out at that point. I was like, dude, there's something wrong with our communication. Like, I do you remember this?
Yeah, of course.
I flipped out. I was like, you gave me pressure to get a full-time job. You said, no, I didn't. And then I said, yes, you did. And then somehow you were like, yeah, I did. And I was like, at this point, I was about to go crazy because I thought we were so good at communicating our thoughts and our misunderstandings. But at that point, I was just like, there's something wrong. And then I don't really know. We got through it. I don't know. I think somehow like maybe he calmed me down. I don't know. But then one final thing. So he got to a point where he said, Serena, in this whole past few months, I never was sure what career path you wanted to choose. Even YouTube, I didn't feel sure about that. And so he said, if you had just been confident about the YouTube path, and if you had just sold that to me with confidence and full belief in it, I would have been a lot more willing to support you. And that's when I like lost it again. Because I think this time I wasn't mad at him, but I was mad at myself and just the whole situation. I had such little belief and confidence in myself, my purpose, my conviction. And I was so afraid to tell anyone, including my husband, what I actually wanted, to the point where he was so confused that he didn't have any faith in it. So what he had to do was then just encourage me to get a full-time job, which was the very thing that was hindering me from having the confidence and the belief to tell him. So it was like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And if I had just worked on myself and my worth first, perhaps I could have avoided all of this entire mess. And so that moment, it was just like a culmination of everything. I was just like, I'm so upset. I was so upset. But it all worked out. I really believe that we needed that fight because prior to that fight, I had felt so low. Oh gosh, I should probably calm down for a second. 1 second here. Prior to that fight, I had felt so low and so stuck for so long. I think there was just a lot of pent up resentment towards myself and towards Alan for months. And so I just let out everything that I had felt, and he let out a lot of things as well. We were able to truly, honestly communicate everything that was on our mind. And it's only when you have that honesty that you can then finally get to an honest conclusion too. Oh, did I miss anything?
No, I think you summarized the fight pretty well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Dude, I didn't get a tissue. Oh, okay. I felt like I went through something just there. It was great.
I think for me, like my thought of marriage was we both work, we both come home, we both eat, very like a typical, I guess, like marriage couple thing. But through the story of our fight, that was like the moment where I had to realize that life's pretty short. At the end of the day, when you really think about it, there's more joy in knowing that your wife is pursuing something that she wants to do and that she's truly joyful. And just being able to see her in the past month to 2 months, being able to pursue her dreams of YouTube and find joy in the process of building these videos has made me so happy. And so yeah, it was a great moment for me to really learn how to live in that moment, not think about how this is going to change our plans, right? How is this going to change our timeline of a kid or savings and things like that? But it was just, yeah, like let's go with it and let's see. And yeah.
If we ever got into a situation where I needed a part-time job or something on the side to sustain me as I pursue this, like we're going to have that conversation too, right?
Sure.
And so just learning to really work with the situation that we have, feeling it out with what's right for our marriage. How do you guys resolve arguments? One of the biggest things that we always try to go by is listening to understand versus listening to respond or defend. Easier said than done. It's funny because prior to marriage, I actually prided myself on being a really good listener, and I validated the other person's feelings. I wouldn't try to think about how I should respond, but I just fully focus on like what they mean. But then once we got married, I just got so comfortable. I don't know, man. All of a sudden, it's not all roses anymore, but it's like, why are you like this? Whenever we had conflict more recently, and he was sharing his side, my brain was like totally not thinking about what is he saying? How should I understand him? What is he trying to explain, or what's his intent? Instead, I was just like, why is he saying that? Like, all of these things he said for this reason is not right because this is how I feel. So yeah, that was like the biggest challenge for me near the end of our first year of marriage, is really stepping back and evaluating, like, did I lose sight of that ability to listen because I was so worried about defending myself? So yeah, don't listen to defend. There's always something that's valuable about what they have to say.
I think when it comes to resolving arguments, when I reflect back, one thing that I struggled with in the beginning was bringing up conflict, because it's a pretty emotionally invested conversation where I have to be like, well, I felt hurt by this, and then I'd have to explain why, and she'll have to like listen, and you go through that whole thing, which can be really tiring. Especially for me, like I'm a pretty emotionally stable person, so I don't like it when I'm like disruptive almost. Like when something like I feel something, I just try to like suppress it almost, where I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to like talk about it. I'll just get over it. Now it's been so much more healthy to like have these conversations right away.
Yeah. Thing that I want to share is just the importance of setting aside time to hash it out. And what I mean is, even after you apologized and maybe had a few exchanges about, oh, sorry, did that hurt you? Oh yeah. Why? Or, if you have a few exchanges and you think, okay, it's resolved, right? Even at that point, I would say something that we try to go by is later on in the day or whenever the next moment we get to connect is, one of us tries to initiate a little like debrief session of, hey, how do you feel now about what just happened earlier? Is there anything else that you realized you left unsaid that you want to share now? Setting aside time like that has just helped us so much. Sometimes when someone has apologized, as the person who was hurt, it's easy to be like, oh, they've apologized, it's fine. Like, I kind of still feel this or that, but it's okay. Like, we'll work through it, right? But when there's space to bring up anything else, you don't feel so guilty to bring it up. Then you can have that space to be like, ooh, actually, I still kind of felt hurt about this. I don't really feel totally understood about this yet. Looking back, is there anything you'd do differently from the beginning of marriage? I think that I would have sought mental health guidance and just career guidance a lot earlier on. Even going into the marriage, even just going into adulthood, there were issues that I was dealing with, like people-pleasing tendencies, lack of confidence, self-worth. The list goes on. Once marriage hit, everything got exposed, and all that lack of confidence I ever had came rushing out, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I felt so low and so like small. Now I'm in therapy, and once I had strong mental health, then I could really bring the healthiest whole version of myself to the marriage. We don't believe in regret. We don't believe in regrets. But we do acknowledge that some of these things that I'm doing now really could have helped if we started it earlier.
How do you keep the fire alive? That's a little weird, actually. Shouldn't have done that.
Oh. Should I not have done that?
No.
What fire? Just kidding. Well, you want to talk about it? You want to talk about the fire?
Sure.
Sure.
Especially since we see each other 24/7 now. Like, we have to be a lot more intentional just with intimacy in general. The biggest learning lesson for us in this year of marriage is like how important emotional intimacy is actually. The stronger your emotional intimacy, the stronger the physical intimacy. Yeah. But if you're noticing that like physical intimacy is less, reflect on sort of the emotional intimacy to see where you guys are at, see how you guys are doing as a couple. I think that's one thing that I learned, I guess, in my year of marriage.
Alan's more of like a shy, private guy when it comes to intimacy. I was like suggesting all these things we could talk about, and he was like, oh, that's a lot. I was like, okay, I'll just reserve those for like my girl talks. But for now, I'll just say two things that really helped us. One would be really carving out time to pursue intimacy, because especially now, like I'm editing videos constantly and we're stuck in quarantine, so we see each other 24/7. So if we're not intentional about setting aside that time, then like it'll never happen, at least for us. But then the second thing is almost like the opposite. Is like kind of weird, but the one like downside about setting aside time is that it's so expected that it might be kind of boring. So to balance that, we also talk a lot about finding ways to make it spontaneous, because again, we're stuck at home. We see each other 24/7, and so there's like no spontaneity involved. We're just like, oh hey, I'm like here, you're here, and that's it. And so you have to put yourself out there to initiate spontaneously when the other person isn't expecting it. If you're both on the same page about being spontaneous, then you know it could escalate into something beautiful. Are you
sure you want to
okay?
share this?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know, just a lot of people that we know will watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're comfortable with it, I guess.
Yep. How did you guys spend your free time over the last year? One of my favorite things was hanging out at our favorite boba shop. Just spending like an hour or two just chatting about anything.
Especially with quarantine, it's been a lot tougher to do date night. We sort of have to improvise, I guess, by eating dinners in our cars. And so we'll go and pick up food and just eat in our cars at a park. I think it's important to change pace, like go on a walk and have a conversation, or go to a park, go on a drive, right? Those are things that you could do to really spark new conversations.
All right, so that is all of our questions for today. Thank you so much for watching us. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If there's any questions or thoughts that this video sparked for you, please feel free to comment below and let us know. We'd be happy to make future videos on it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.